Hello everybody, welcome back to another video, this time with the JA37D Jaktviggen. A Viggen carrying AIM-9Ls is pretty powerful and has been anticipated for a while. Unfortunately though, it just happened to come in an update where 5 F-16s were introduced into the game. Not only do these do literally everything better than you do, but it also carries better armament than you. They also get 6 AIM-9Ls, or can substitute 2 of them out for radar missiles. Unfortunately, you're still stuck with the Sky Flash though, which is pretty short range, and not the greatest. It'll still get consistent kills if you know how to use it, but it's not the greatest radar missile you could have. I've avoided using the term dead on arrival though, as with the high speed of the Jaktviggen, you can just kind of cruise around on the deck with your hundreds of large caliber countermeasures, just dropping them along as you scoot across the deck with periodic flares on, trying to prevent as many missile launches on you as possible. Combine this with the fact that the Viggen has really good high-speed energy retention, and this usually sets you up for success where you can rush on the deck, of which I typically go straight down the center, and you can catch the people who rushed left of their airfield and turn right into them, launching AIM-9Ls that they don't expect. Now, do remember though, the AIM-9L was nerfed this patch. From my experience, it kind of feels like an AIM-9H that's 30 Gs in all aspect. The flare resistance is a little bit better. I honestly kind of say it's akin to, let's say, a Magic 1. You're going to be able to burn through flares, but it isn't really consistent. If somebody knows how to throttle drop correctly and decoy it with flares, the AIM-9L absolutely will bite off on them now. It isn't an instant kill anymore like it was last patch. This doesn't make it a bad missile though. It is still well above average. Your flare resistance is about as good as like an R60M, meaning you can still burn through targets that are really hot, like F-14s and MiG-29s. It just isn't, you know, an instant death button. This means, though, that you'll likely have to play the AIM-9L to its strengths, instead of just a one-size-fits-all missile. It has really long range, so you can usually sneak attack people from angles they aren't expecting, or you can orbital strike them from space, though I don't really do that in the Viggen, because that's the F-16's domain. It does everything you do, but better, and I just don't really feel like challenging them to their game. This is okay though, as like I mentioned earlier, the Viggen is incredibly fast on the deck. Plus, I feel like it's well situated to use the AIM-9Ls to abuse how many top tier premiums are in the game now. The most frequent offender I find is the MiG-29 ML. The MiG-29 is hot enough that your AIM-9L will sometimes not care about their flares. I'd say about 50% of the time. But even then, that's if they're paying attention in the first place. A lot of these guys are so tunnel visioned and hyper-focused on finding people to shoot R-24Rs at, that they completely forget to be self-aware and have spatial awareness. So you can kind of just spam these out, and this goes for basically any rank 7 premium now. You've probably already seen it in a couple clips already, but the biggest struggle I've had with the Viggen so far is that the radar just does not want to cooperate with you. In Pulse Doppler, it'll just refuse to lock people up a lot of the time. I have no clue what causes this, it just does it. The Viggen is quirky like that. It's gotten to the point where every time I've played this after recording, I just take out the AIM-9Ls, and you don't really lose much. Sure, it's nice to have a radar missile you can shoot in the head on, but it isn't necessary, and having the toolkit of 6 AIM-9Ls to just fire and forget at people is way better than you think it would be, even though it's just one missile. I feel bad for the Phantom behind me. Playing a non-Pulse Doppler Phantom is just incredibly awful right now, because you're competing against 4th gen fighters in an absolute brick. For anybody who is wondering, the new Viggen gets a drop tank. It actually helps extend your endurance a lot, as it lets you run a lower internal fuel, and be a little bit lighter when you get into fights. Also, for the whole 0 people who asked, no, the drop tank does not have collision, so you can't bonk people with it, unfortunately. Now, just a heads up, for every drop tank fighter, the fuel loadouts are a little buggy. I actually took 45 minutes of internal fuel here, but it gave me around 30. This is because every fighter that can take a drop tank is missing around 5 to 10 minutes of internal fuel, whether you take it or not. The drop tank on the Viggen helps extend your endurance by around 10 minutes, so taking 30 minutes internal fuel, or technically 45 on the menu screen, and taking the drop tank is basically equivalent to max fuel in the previous Viggen model, which is what you should be running anyway, because it's such a thirsty plane. Also, for this one game I tried using the gyroscopic crosshair. It works about the same as the cockpit gun sight in the Saber. Please don't use it. It is so poorly implemented, it just throws off your aim even more. I thought it would help the Viggen because you don't have tracers and it's hard to tell where the rounds are going unless you practice with this gun every day. But it really just made it worse. I would just stick to the normal static crosshair. One thing I was pretty disappointed by that I thought was going to be a lot more effective was turning on your periodic flares and just constantly pre-flaring. Unfortunately though, the Viggen is so hot that a lot of times missiles just don't care and go straight to your burner. Even though you have large caliber countermeasures, it's just not something that happens very often. I still do it just in case because, you know, any missile you can defeat is good, and you have plenty of countermeasures to spare. Just don't get your hopes up, it doesn't work the same as using it on the A-10 or the Harrier. You still have to be somewhat aware and take your time to cut your afterburner if a missile is actually tracking you. Off in the distance there are two targets, the F-14 and one F-5E on the deck. I launch a Sky Flash at him, and let this be a note that even though it has barely any burn time, it accelerates so hard that our missiles reach each other at about the same time. This guy hugs the deck, and yeah, it's not going to be able to track him if he's that close. Fortunately though, he's tunnel visioned on my teammate in front of me, and this gives me a chance to just 180 for him, though I prioritize this Tomcat that ends up dying right as I shoot a missile at him. Classic War Thunder timing. This just leaves us in a dogfight with this F-5E, and my plan is just to sit inside his turn circle as much as possible. If I can do this, this usually scares people into making mistakes, like, you know, letting me launch an AIM-9L at them. Though it is an F5, and he is able to flare it because he has some pretty cold engines. He goes vertical, and if I had any other gun, I'd be able to hit this shot, but I have no clue where the rounds are going. And then this Phantom graciously flies by me, almost crashing into me. Because my teammates pushed the F5E down, this gives me the opportunity to dump my nose and get a little bit of speed back, as I was just kind of floating in the air doing circles like a kite, because of my Canard Delta design giving me a ton of lift. Now that I've pulled up behind him, I just have to hit a gunshot, and yeah, it isn't pretty. I sprayed off basically all of my ammo trying to hit that shot. Into the last game here, when you guys clicked on this video, I hope you were ready for some flare drop ASMR, because with this thing having over 300 flares, at the first sign of any missile, I just turn on periodic flares and let it drop for me every single second. I may not be able to out-dogfight the F-16, but what I can do is at least bleed more speed. I pull into the vertical to try and cut my turn as tight as possible, and then get off an AIM-9L because I want to get him out of the match as much as I can. Unfortunately, he is paying attention, and I was having really bad luck shooting AIM-9Ls at F-16s. They just didn't want to burn through the flares. I guess the engine is cold enough. I launch on this Mirage 2000, and it's going to be the contrary for him. It ignores his, like, 4 flares that he just dropped in a single cluster and goes straight to his engine. The F-14 on my team is about to die, and this just leaves me with one F-16 teammate. But if there's one thing the Viggen can do really well, it's be a team player. With the high-speed energy retention, you can make passes through a fight, or if you want to play your AOA, you can do that as well and bait for your teammate. This leads us to split off into our own fights, but we're actually close enough that if we're in trouble, we can signal to each other and be there in time to help each other out, which is honestly the pinnacle of team play. And I'm surprised I got this level of competence from a random who likely GE'd his way into the F-16. He signals for help, and I rush over to try and shoot an AIM-9L at this same F-16 that's been giving me trouble. Unfortunately, he flares it, and then I miss my gunshots because I have a chronic skill issue. And in the distance, you can see the wave of Phoenixes that their team's F-14 thought was a good idea to launch. I use my last AIM-9L here, and again, he flares it. But I actually didn't really expect that to hit, and I was mostly just trying to push him away. This lets us break up the team fight into 2 separate 2v1s. Now this F-14 could probably dominate the fight if he wanted. He has altitude to work with to give him extra energy over this F-16. And I'm damaged, so I'm just kind of floating around waiting for an opportunity. But instead I just get to sit behind him. That's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching, and remember to subscribe as I'm trying to hit 5,000 subscribers before the end of the year. Other than that, I have the Discord server. If you'd like to be part of a growing community of active War Thunder players, make sure to join that. Other than that, that's all for this video. Thank you guys so much for watching. I'll see you guys next time. Bye-bye.